G'day guys, Leigh Diprose here for fstoplabs.com. You know, it's about time that we started the question about whether digital photography is really photography. You know, the use of Photoshop versus the non-use of Photoshop. Are you a photographer or aren't you a photographer? It's one of those questions that people ask me all the time, and in all the time that I've been photographing myself, I've probably had about 6 or more people say you're not a photographer because you use Photoshop. And you know, it kind of hurts a little bit, and I think for a lot of photographers out there, they get asked the same sort of question as well. But really at the end of the day, who are the people actually looking at the photos? You know, and who are the people buying your photos? Is it the actual photographers? No, they're the ones that you're critics. It's the actual public, and you find with the public, they see a scene differently to how you would see it. And I really believe that Photoshop should be used. I'll give you the example of, you know, a painter. Let's just say that they're out in the field, sitting on their deck chair, probably having some wine, looking at their scene and going, you know, that little bit of green's there, I'm just gonna use my brush and do a sweep there, because I see that as something different to what it should be. So an artist will sit there and go, it's not painting by numbers. You know, it's their impression of the scene on a canvas. And that's exactly the same with me, with my photography. You know, I go out there and take a photo, click, and I go, you know, that's painting by numbers for me. I don't enjoy that. It's kind of dull and boring. And sure enough, you can adjust your curves and levels to add a little bit more contrast and, you know, do a bit of dodge and burn, but I like to take that extra step. I like to actually say, you know, the light was hitting that tree there, I really want to emphasize that, and I just want to blur that out a little bit to create some background interest. Those sorts of things I can do in Photoshop to really create the way that I perceive the image to be. So really, am I a photographer, or am I I don't know, what do you want to call me? Put it in the comments below. But I believe that photography should be explored, and with the use of Photoshop, you can actually do that exploring, and you can actually excel in your artistic ability. Sure enough, there's a place for taking, you know, standard shots that require no editing. You know, if you're working in the press, or if you're covering a war story, or let's say, you know, some photo competitions that don't allow it. But for me, I'm not interested in that sort of photography. For me, I'm interested in exploring the artistic ability that photography and Photoshop give me. So it's really one thing that differs to most people, and there's so many different types of photography out there that require different tools in Photoshop. You know, like wedding photography, like macro photography, landscape photography, even architectural photography. They all require different types of tools in Photoshop to create their well-rounded look. Probably the most classic example would be HDR photography. You need, you know, 3 different exposures, crunch them together, sometimes even more, to get a nice image. And some people like that, some people hate it, you know. Personally, I don't mind it, but there's a certain way where it goes too far. So yes, Photoshop can go too far, and I completely agree with some people when they post their comments on my photos that you've taken it too far, Leigh, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I did. But at the end of the day, ask yourself the question, is Photoshop for you, or isn't it? Do you really want to explore your artistic ability, or do you want to paint by numbers? Pop your comments down below. I really would like to hear them, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.